So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Wednesday, August 14th, 2024, day 904 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. For you, it's likely August 13th, and this is the day's news from August 13th. Hey, Eddie. Hey, Nightshade, Hobo, PT, PH. Hey, Rob Walker. Hey, Joe, what do you know? Hey, Mad Mike. Hey, Brian. Hey, Van. Fitzy, how you doing, pal? Hey, Marius. Alex, good to see you. Nicola. The peeps are coming in. Good evening, everybody, or good morning to you, Lars. Hey, Anthony. Hey, Dawn. Chattanooga's in the house. Hey, Walter. Hey, Graham. Chattanooga, Tennessee. I haven't been in Tennessee in a couple years. Good evening to the UK. I'm just plugging along, Fitz. Yeah, there is. It is a pleasure to watch the news this week, isn't it, man? Hey, David Frazier. Well, we're going to give you an update tonight, Anthony. Hang in there. Hey, Jessica. Hey, Doc. So, guys, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. I did not see a Sukhoi 27 over Kursk. Is there a claim that one was shot down? I am unaware of that. Hey, Beltbat. Hey, Norway, Sweden. I do love the international nature of our audience. Yes, I do. It gives me a great deal of pleasure. Hey, Renee Herman. Okay. So, guys, let's get into it, shall we? For those of you that were on the live last night, as the live drew to an end, you heard the air raid sirens go off. And we had another air raid last night, of course. Territorial Defense did its usual good job and shot down 30 of 38 Shahed drones of the 131, 136 class. 2 Iskander missiles also came in, but it's unclear where they hit or what their disposition was. They were not claimed to be shot down. At the same time, and this is some bullshit, the Russians claimed last night that they shot down 18 UAVs. Now, I'm sorry, but that's not possible. It's possible that you only shot down 18. But with all the drones flying in Kursk right now, I can't even imagine how many hundreds of drones are in the air at any given time. So Russia claimed it shot down 18 UAVs last night. Ukraine claimed it shot down 30. On the Kursk invasion, there are new advances to the west, as well as advances to the south and new incursions across the Belgorod border. So across the Belgorod border, there are now 3 cross-border incursions happening in Belgorod. That's all anywhere from about 60 kilometers southeast of Sudza all the way to just about 20 miles west of Vovchansk, or 30 kilometers west of Vovchansk. It is being reported that Ukraine has now captured over 2,000 POWs. Now, what's really critical to understand about this is that these POWs are kids. They're conscripts. These are kids, right? When you're a high school student in Russia today, in the Russian Federation, when you graduate from high school at the age of 18, you go for a 1-year military service, a conscription service. You spend your year inside Russia doing more kind of work like National Guard work, right? Like filling sandbags, helping in flooding situations, guarding the border, that kind of thing. Real low-level stuff. These kids were never supposed to see combat. They were stationed where they were supposed to be safe inside of Kursk. Now the Ukrainians come pouring across the border. These kids don't know what to do. And we're seeing mass surrenders. Now this is critical because one of the ways that Putin has managed to keep up support for this special military operation of his is by not drafting the citizens of Moscow and St. Petersburg, but whose sons and daughters make up the conscripts. These aren't ethnic Tuvans from 7 time zones away. These people are Russians. They're St. Petersburg, they're Moscow citizens, they're the children of the wealthy. Having them as POWs could light a fuse among the Russian society that we haven't seen anything like before. This is our hope. Now, what else? In terms of the advance, as of tonight, it is quite a pleasure to report that according to Zelensky's address this evening, Ukraine is currently holding 74 towns and villages inside of Russia. 74. They have captured over 1,000 square kilometers, an estimated 1,050 square kilometers. That's about 25 Bakhmuts. That's about 25 Bakhmuts in 1 week. In 1 week, without the kind of casualties that we saw the Russians suffer in trying to take Bakhmut. I misreported this last night. There are 180,000 people under evacuation order. About 120,000 of them have evacuated. So at this time, the number of displaced people inside of Russia is about 180,000. Now, you are never going to believe. I mean, you cannot make this shit up. Guess where the Russian government wants to send these refugees to? They've got almost 200,000 internally displaced residents, right? Where are they going to send them to? Zaporizhia. They're going to send them to Ukraine. They're going to send them to Zaporizhia, right? All of that occupied territory where millions of Ukrainians fled from. There are lots of empty houses, lots of empty hotels, lots of empty spaces. They're going to put them in there. This is the current plan of the federal government of the Russian Federation. Unreal. Multiple analysts. I listened to multiple analysts today talk about this, and they are all in agreement. The mix of conscripts, border guards, mercenaries, FSB, regular army forces, and the Rosguardia that are all being poured into Kursk will lead to confusion in command and control. And we're already seeing it happen on the ground. A Ka-52 helicopter was involved in a friendly fire incident. It destroyed 2 Mr. S self-propelled howitzers and an APC. Now, the thing about the Ka-52 firing on a Mr. S howitzer, Ukraine doesn't have those. If the guy in the helicopter knew anything about artillery, he would know that he was firing on a piece of artillery that only Russia has. How could he think it was not his? So anyway, there have been other reports of friendly fire incidences across the Kursk region, and I think that we can expect there to be more. I think probably Ukraine is counting on it. Neither the US nor the UK have green-lighted long-range weapons use as part of the Kursk offensive. Now, this is so important for everybody to understand. And I want to thank Vanetta Larrett, who has the Google Doc share, where you can get email message templates to Congress, the Senate, and the White House on this question of allowing the use of these weapons inside of Russia. We have got to untie the Ukrainians' hands. Look, if the Ukrainians could have used ATACMS to hit those air bases where the glide bombs get launched from, maybe they wouldn't have had to invade Kursk in the first place. It's time to untie the Ukrainians' hands. The Russians send missiles across the border all the time that are powered by computer chips supplied by the West. Let's be serious. If we can't tighten up the sanctions regime enough to keep the Russians from getting their hands on those chips, then the very least we can do is untie the Ukrainians' hands and let them use the long-range weapons we have provided in a way that is consistent with the defense of Ukraine and international law. To quote the German foreign minister today regarding the use of German equipment in Russia, he said that the one regulation for use of our donated equipment is in line with international law. Period. End of conversation. And that should be the only conversation we need to have. We need to trust our Ukrainian allies. They understand the Russians in a way that we fail to every time. It is time to take the gloves off. We have crossed every red line that Moscow has set down or that we have set for ourselves. Let's give them the use of the ATACMS, please, for the love of God. And I know a great deal was made about Keir Starmer's comments about the unrestricted use of storm shadows. But it appears that that is not the case, my friends in the UK. Storm shadows have also been verboten for use in this Kursk offensive. And again, if the Ukrainians could just use those weapons to strike the airfields that are killing their people every day, then maybe they wouldn't have to go in the first place. Untie their hands. Now, Putin is looking for somebody to blame for this, of course, because that's our Russia. And he has appointed a former bodyguard to figure out who it is that he needs to hang for these failures in Kursk, when we all know that the failure is Putin himself. Putin is the core of the corrupt ineptitude that has led to this disaster for Ukraine and Russia. Now, the guy that he is putting in charge of taking back Kursk is a guy named Colonel General Alexei Duman. This guy is a former bodyguard of Putin's. He was a bodyguard of Putin's from 1995 up until, I think, 2014, by which point he had moved over to the GRU, became head of the GRU in 2014. He was one of the guys principally responsible with architecting the illegal annexation of Crimea. He was the guy that was responsible for the extraction of Yanukovych. He got Yanukovych out of Ukraine after the Maidan and the Revolution of Dignity. He has been touted by Kremlinologists as a potential replacement for Putin, as Putin's inheritor. And now that he's been given charge of this job, the common thinking is that he is likely Putin's successor apparent. And that success in this job could well lead to him replacing Putin. Alexei Deman. We're going to see more of this guy. But if you ask me, this is the end of his career. He's not going to be successful. These guys over and over again demonstrate their incompetence. And he's got a problem. And that's the Ukrainians in Russia. And for a week, the Ukrainian army has been going to bed at night, sleeping in Russia, waking up in Russia. Increasingly, they're going to be difficult to dislodge. And if he can't coordinate these disparate groups, if he can't set up a command and control that brings together the conscripts, the border guards, the mercenaries, the FSB, the Russian regulars, the Rosguardia, if he can't get them all under, that's going to be a problem for him. A Ukrainian soldier videotaped himself 50 kilometers north of Suja in the town of Legov. And he stood in front of the, welcome to town sign, did a little video claiming that he had captured the town. He had not, right? Let's be clear. But it's a clever little video, and he's 50 miles. 50 miles inside of Russia, north of Suja. And Suja's about 20 kilometers in, right? In that area, though, up there around where that guy was, a Russian mill blogger is claiming that a bunch of prison guards were taken as POWs. Now, that doesn't make much sense because, welcome to my life. Now, that doesn't make much sense because prison guards are not active combatants. There wouldn't be any reason for them to be taken as POWs unless they had become actively involved in some kind of resistance. So that's not clear. It's possible that some prison guards were taken as POWs. The governor of the Sumy region is reporting that border strikes with glide bombs are down from 30 a day to 10 a day. Because now, of course, the Russians are dropping those glide bombs on their own cities. And it does appear, remember I said that Russia is a one-trick pony, that they have one strategy, that they just bomb the shit out of everything, scorched earth. And how are they going to do that in their own country? Well, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing because they are a one-trick pony with no other strategy. Video of Ukrainian forces ambushed in Gary, 25 miles southeast of Suja. So there's a video of a couple of armored personnel carriers carrying Ukrainian fighters engaging with Chechens who ambushed them with RPGs at basically point-blank range. And the Chechens, for their part, had captured an MTLB, I think, or a BTR from the Ukrainians. The Defense Security think tank described the Russian response to the Kursk invasion as confused and improvised, saying that there appeared to be no contingency plans in place should such an invasion happen. Can you guys hear those sirens? It looks like we've got incoming. The ISW is reporting that with the FSB in charge in Kursk, and this not a military operation, but rather a counter-terrorism operation, we should expect to see false flag operations where the FSB conducts war crimes and atrocities against Russian civilians simply in order to blame the Ukrainians. Now you think about that and you think, oh, these guys are crazy. The Russians aren't going to do that. No, yeah, they are. They absolutely are. That's who we're dealing with when we deal with the Russians. And that's what we don't get through our heads in the West. That's what the Ukrainians understand, is what the Russians are capable of. Now, almost as if on cue, as when the ISW said this, suddenly Telegram is flooded with images of Russian soldiery in Kursk looting everything. Not the invading force, not the Ukrainian force going in looting everything. No, Russian soldiers looting everything. We got video from the phones of captured Russian soldiers of them looting houses, videos that they shot themselves. There seems to be a complete breakdown of law and order in the front line, and the Russian forces on their way to the engagement are looting emptied villages. That's our Russia. That's our Russia. That's being reported by the Kyiv Post. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Georgy Kyiv, said that Ukraine is not interested in taking land in Kursk. Ukraine is only trying to defend its own people and its own territory from a foreign aggressor. And that gives us some insight if that's accurate. And I think it is. I think we all have every reason to believe that Ukraine is not the imperialist power here trying to grab somebody else's land for themselves. They're in an existential struggle. The Ukrainians are in an existential struggle to defend their own sovereignty and territorial integrity, their own culture, their own language, their own history, from being erased by a genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin. That's the situation. And I think Georgie's saying that clearly today, that Ukraine is not interested in territorial gains for itself, but rather in defending and preserving the lives of its own people, makes it clear that whatever the Kursk invasion is, it is not an imperialist land grab on the part of Ukraine. It is, however, a critical lesson for the Russians to learn in humility. I mean, I listened to Putin today say, how can he hold negotiations with a people that target civilians, that target civilian infrastructure, and risk nuclear disaster at nuclear power plants? He said those very words without the slightest hint of irony. Unreal. I mean, the lack of self-awareness among these people is it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. The Russians are facing a drinking water shortage in Ukraine due to their own attacks against critical infrastructure. They are being forced to beg, so they're currently being rationed at the rate of a liter a day, which is about 1/4 of the minimum. And this is in skyrocketing temperatures, heat waves, right? The worst. They're down to a liter a day for water, or they have to beg it off the local Ukrainians, or they are being forced to their own improvised filtration systems and drinking from stagnant puddles. This has led to an increase in waterborne illnesses among the Russian aggressors. So these guys are not in good shape. Lindsey Graham called the strike into Kursk bold, beautiful, and brilliant. And for the first time in my life, I have agreed with Lindsey Graham. Graham was in Kyiv, and he was talking about a couple of things. He said he wants to see an invitation for Kyiv to join NATO this year. That seems highly unlikely, but he said it. That's probably why he said it, because he knows it can't be delivered. Anyway, he wants to see more aid for Ukraine, and he says that Ukraine should hire F-16 pilots that have retired from other foreign armed services. Now, this is the first time we have heard this. And it wasn't him just saying it. It was him quoting Zelensky. He said, what Graham said was, if you're an F-16 pilot and you've retired, but you've got that fast jet experience, these people here in Kyiv, I just talked to President Zelensky, he wants to hire you. It is about, now I've wondered why this hasn't happened before. Maybe it has, right? Maybe they've got a bunch of F-16 pilots already onboarded, and they're just saying this publicly now to get us ready for it. I don't know the answer to that. But I have often wondered why. I was told once that in the the International Legion, I was told once that in Ukraine's International Legion, this pilot that I was talking to knew of at least a dozen F-16 pilots who had volunteered for Ukraine. From, American, UK, whatever. Why aren't they the pilots that are flying these planes? They've got experience. Some of them might have combat experience. And maybe it's all just an operational security issue. Ukraine doesn't want us to know that they have the pilots, that they just need the fucking planes. I don't know. But the door is now open, apparently, for foreign pilots to come into Ukraine. Now, the Russian aerospace forces today shared photographs of an Su-24 whose hard points had been adapted to drop glide bombs, right? So the hard points are where you attach a missile or a bomb to a plane. And this Su-24 had been adapted so that they could drop glide bombs. And this was being touted as, Russia, we're always innovating. Ukrainian intelligence is claiming that the reason they're having to do this is because they're running out of Su-34s. They're running, one of the largest air forces in the world at one time is now running out of its, I would call it its latest and greatest fighter bomber, but then there's the Su-57 and all the trolls will be on me about that bullshit, which is not even really a real plane. They have maybe 8 of them, I think, or something. I don't know. Anyway. It's a joke. They're running out of Su-34s. That's why they're tying glide bombs onto Su-24s. North of Moscow, partisans blew up a train engine. Partisans keep hitting train engines. Thomas better watch his back. On the rest of the front, and it's important to recognize that while there's a lot happening in Kursk, and it's clearly probably the most important thing happening right now, there's 1,000 kilometers of front line where people are fighting and bleeding and unaliving every day. And Ukraine, for its part, down around the Toretsk and New York area, has counterattacked and reclaimed some of its recently lost positions. And so we know there's a couple places on the front where the Russians just keep grinding forward. New York and Toretsk, the Prokofsk direction in particular. In Prokofsk, the largest number of battles in a week were fought yesterday. And Russia is pushing hard there. They've gotten now, a week ago, they were about 20 kilometers from Prokofsk. Today, they're about 14 kilometers from Prokofsk. Iran is planning to deliver hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia, the U.S. warned today. The U.S. also warned that if they do it, there will be problems. Now, the State Department didn't comment any further than that. But it does seem as though Iran is about to deliver to Russia hundreds of ballistic missiles, likely the Fatah 110s. Oh, sorry, Fitz. New York is a town in Ukraine. Curiously enough, not named by an American, but by some Germans of all. So some German immigrants went to New York. They loved New York. Then they, for some reason, immigrated to Ukraine, and they named the town that they came to New York. So yeah, PT, it would be nice if we could stop those shipments of Iranian missiles to Russia. But I don't know that that's going to be an option. It's my understanding that Keir Starmer had a telephone call with Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini earlier this week, and that he urged not just restraint with Israel, but also non-cooperation with Russia. Now, how far urging is going to get out any of us with this, I don't know. I don't know whether or not Mr. Starmer offered Tehran anything in exchange for its cooperation. Anyway, okay, so guys, that's the top line news items. Now we'll go to questions and answers. Just before we do that, I want to thank Ballerina, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. I don't know if Ballerina is in. If he is, give him a shout out, say thank you. And then also I want to thank the moderator team, best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. I also want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps public group over on the Book of Faces. If you haven't joined us over there, join us over there. I publish the replay of this live on there every day. And so for anybody who's looking for the live, if you missed a live, Anthony, and you want to catch it, it's all posted to the Peters Peeps public group on the Book of Faces. I want to thank Vanetta Larrett, who, of course, has the Google Doc share where you can get our letters to Congress for no-fly zones and unrestricted use of weapons. And I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server and the Alexievich archive. Thank you, Lars. Dr. David Hayes says there are lots of Polish F-16 pilots. So, yeah, Dave. And I guess the language barrier isn't bad with the Poles. The Ukrainians and the Poles sort of mostly understand each other, is what I understand. Hey, PH, that was a nice comment today on the one video. I thought, anyway, yeah. It's always good to see you guys in the comments. Somehow Ukrainians are controlling the airspace of Kursk. There is no Russian airplanes. Not true, Wind. That's just not true. The Russians are running at least 50 sorties a day of glide bombs against Ukrainian positions. So they're dropping aviation on the Ukrainians. There's no, I have a high degree of confidence that that is correct. Walter Williamson says, is there any sabotage going on at the opposite end of Russia towards the North Korean border? Walter, there have been attacks against rail infrastructure in an effort to slow the delivery of North Korean weapons, right? Particularly last spring, North Korean shells, 152 millimeter shells. I'm unaware of any other recent sabotage out east. Ukraine, Bobby says Ukraine has their MiGs in Kursk. That could be, Bobby. I don't have good data on how Ukrainian fighters are providing ground support in this offensive. If anybody has a good source on that, I'd be interested in seeing it. Motherland under attack and no nukes? Of course not, because the motherland wants to survive. They're not suicidal. Did you see Belarus sent equipment to Russia to fill shortages in Kursk and other areas? I did not see that, Nightshade, no. But of course, Belarus stands shoulder to shoulder with the Kremlin. The last dictator in Europe, our buddy Uncle Luka. Joey Contino is talking about the prospect of an encirclement in Donetsk in the Rudivka front. Now, are you talking about the elements of those 3 Ukrainian brigades, Dave? Is that what he's talking about? He's talking about Ukrainians being encircled, right? Are the Russian civilians hostile towards the Ukrainian forces? As far as I can tell, the Russian civilians have mostly fled ahead of the invading force. Of the 180,000 people that live in this area, 120 are gone. Yeah, I do think that Chechnya and Dagestan will leave the Russian Federation, but I would not expect that to happen soon. That's like a 36 months to 120 months kind of event. Have you heard anything about a potential Ukrainian encirclement of Russians in Donetsk? Oh, so the opposite, an encirclement of Russians in Donetsk. No, Beckham, I haven't. Although one would think that it's about to get much easier to do that because we know that the Russians are pulling forces from Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Kharkiv. Not Donetsk, as far as we know, but we know that they're pulling forces from those other areas, from the front line, to kick the Ukrainians out of Russia, which makes perfect sense, right? You would understand that that would be a goal to have. Did Ukraine lose a MiG today, or just the pilot? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I didn't see anything about a Ukrainian MiG loss. The Emperor has no clothes. Correctamundo. Hi, Bjorn. Hey, Sasha. Hey, Nicola. Hey, Julian. Is there a possibility of Ukrainians encircling the natural salient in Kursk? Of Ukrainians encircling the natural salient in Kursk? I'm not sure I understand the question, Julian. I think that there are lots of possibilities. And I did a video today about what I thought might be one maximalist goal of this incursion, which is to set a front line or straighten the border out where the Ukrainians have Ukraine on 3 sides and it's just a straight front line / border. What impact has the refugee flow from Kursk had on Russians' view of the war? That is yet to be determined, OTAN bot. The Russian propagandists, of course, are on the TV screaming about how this has united the Russians, that we are all now prepared to put on uniforms and defend the motherland from this, aggressor invasion, whatever. And there's going to be some of that. There are going to be people who are now more inclined to support the war, maybe put on a uniform to defend their homeland from what they see as an invasive aggressor. There's going to be some of that. But I think the overwhelming cognitive dissonance of this special military operation in a neighboring country that wasn't supposed to affect us, and in a country where we've eliminated all the men have either fled or, been unalived. The trenches are filled with women and children. There's, the Ukrainians have fought to the last man. They're done. They're not anything we have to worry about. And now suddenly it appears that there's 17,000 very aggressive Ukrainians that you have to fucking worry about on your own territory. The cognitive dissonance has to be incredible for these people. I mean, they have to start, one would think, But there's a psychopathy to the Russian culture that we do not understand in the West. A lot of them are going to double down. He is not the last dictator in Europe. Lukashenko is not the last dictator in Europe. Who is? Major retired Bob, Major Bob. Hello, Hitman. Oh, I guess you've got... you've got Orban, too. But Orban hasn't eroded all of the constitutional structures and institutions of the democracy quite yet. Putin has issued a cease and desist order to Ukraine. He really means it this time. Major retired Bob, on the correct subject, the Russians are never going to allow Ukraine to keep that area. Well, it's not a question of allowing Ukraine. It's a question of denying that area to Ukraine. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not a military person. I'm no expert in that field. But I have to ask the question, seeing the empty tank yards, looking at the statistics of losses of Soviet stockpiles, looking at the losses of men in Ukraine, how exactly, where exactly are the forces and tools going to come from that will dislodge the Ukrainians if they want to stay? I don't have an answer to that. Hey, Lars. Putin, would you count Putin as a European dictator? Is Russia Europe? Is it? I don't know. It sort of is, I guess. I don't know. Oh, and Erdogan, too. So that's a fair point. Has Ukraine started using the F-16 to destroy Russian targets? I do not know. I am anxious to report on the first confirmed F-16 combat mission, but to date, I don't know that it's happened. Other questions, comments? We got about 13 minutes here. Monaco royal family, what? Oh, we're still counting. I'm sorry I said anything. Still counting dictators in Europe, huh? Oh, Storm is the latest. I see. Got it, Major. Attacking Russia has shown the world just how weak Russia is. Yeah, Anthony, you are right. Everybody, you can be sure that all of Russia's enemies are watching as Ukraine just pours across the border and takes Russian land. Why on earth wouldn't the Japanese take the Kuril Islands? Why on earth wouldn't the Chinese think about Vladivostok and North Manchuria? Why on earth shouldn't everybody be thinking about carving up this beast while it's wounded? They are. They are. You can be sure. What is about Kamala? I don't know. She's running for president. Look like she's got a good chance. I'm going to vote for her. I'm certainly not voting for Tangerine Palpatine. Hey, Cyberdoc. Gowron, son of Morel. That's great. German tanks, first time on Russian soil since 1943. Trump sounded like Daffy Duck yesterday. I didn't see that one. Ukraine, I was on the ground in Odessa in February. It concerns me when people who haven't been talk. Gadget Gary. Gadget Gary is concerned when people who haven't been to Ukraine talk. Talk about Ukraine? Well, Gadget Gary, if you're talking to me, if you'd have been on this pod or this live a few minutes ago, you'd have heard the fucking air raid sirens here in Kyiv. So take your concerns elsewhere or contribute to the conversation. Hey, Superfly Samurai. Oh, yeah, I saw that Musk was doing an interview with Trump. I tried to get to it or get an analysis of it today, but I didn't have time. Cyberdoc, you're a fucking riot, dude. Putin is not going to fire off nukes. He has a sense of his own survival. He's not suicidal. Dave Hayes says, sadly, as a professor, I do nothing but talk about places I haven't been. Book learning. You know, everybody, Dave Hayes there, he's one of them PhDs. Now, you know what you have to do to get a PhD, right? You have to add to the sum total knowledge of the human race, which means you have to discover something or know something or assert something that no one in the history of our species has done before. So at some point in his dissertation, our boy Dave here, he knew something that no one else did. He was the first to know it. And he wrote it down and he presented it to his thesis board and they gave him a doctorate for adding to the sum total of human knowledge. That's what it takes to get a PhD. Good to see you, Doc. Nuclear PPs. You have 2 PhDs. One is a post-hole digger. You can get yourself a tractor attachment for that these days, pal. What's stopping UK and USA greenlighting Ukraine? Fear, Nicola. It's, you know, we all suffer from our own inherent biases and prejudices and views of the world. And one of the entrenched views in the Western diplomatic corps, in the establishment Western diplomatic corps, who have all been serving since the Cold War, right? Or who grew up in a Cold War mentality. They live in a world where, in their mind, the US and Russia are still kind of the big players in the world. And that's just not true anymore, and it hasn't been true for a long time. Obama called Russia quite rightly a regional player, right? Not a world power. And he was right. The problem is that Russia doesn't see itself that way. And with its extraction economy controlled by the oligarchs and state, it was able to funnel billions and billions of dollars into destabilizing activities around the world in Western democracies for the last 20 years. And that has also influenced our perception. There are people inside our own governments who kowtow to the Kremlin, and they have to be rooted out. Like this whole system that supports the gangsters of the Kremlin around the globe has to be rooted out and destroyed. And I think the West is afraid of the 6,000 nuclear arms that they have. They're particularly afraid of Russia's collapse and those nuclear weapons going rogue, loose nukes. I think that is their fear. It was a very small addition, says Dave. Dave, they're all small additions, pal. They're all small additions. That's how we accrete the great knowledge that we have. We stand on the shoulders of those that came before. But to make an addition it's another brick in the wall. Hey, Chef Deb. They do need free use of weapons, Major. I couldn't agree more. Does anyone think any of those Russian nukes actually work? No, I don't have a master's, Bobby. I just have I have 2 bachelors and 2 minors, and then a lifetime of pain. Does anyone think those Russian nukes actually work, Paul? On the tactical side, it's highly likely that many of those do not work, according to the analysts. But on the strategic side, the intercontinental ballistic missiles, it is likely that many of those are still able to fly. Of the 1,700 deployed nuclear weapons that Russia has of its arsenal of 6,000, it's likely that 1,700 of them work. Now, beyond that, who knows? Well, thank you, Dave. I certainly appreciate that. That's very thoughtful. Yeah, nobody learned the lessons of Afghanistan, not just the Soviets. We all fucked that one up. You got a fan here, Dave. Julian F36 loves your posts, as do I. Okay. So, guys, again, let's see. We got about 5 minutes here. Again, I want to thank the sponsor of tonight's live, Ballerina. I want to thank Dark Irish, who had sponsored the last couple of lives, and Eli, who had sponsored the last couple of lives. I have no live sponsors after today. So if anybody is interested, check out the PayPal and just PayPal $50 or more to the PayPal, and you will be the sponsor of the next live. And I want to thank the moderator team, best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. Big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps public group on the Book of Faces. Remember, I repost the live on that group every day. So if you miss a live, you can check it out if you join us on the Facebook group. I want to thank Vanetta Larrett, who has the Google Doc share, where you can get our email message templates to Congress, Senate, and the White House regarding the use of ATACMS on Russian soil, the unrestricted use of American weapons to the Ukrainians, and a request for a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro. Big thanks to all the Patreon supporters. Patreon guys, Apple has changed its rules. It's going to start taking 30% of your, not on any new Patreon supporters. It takes 30% of your contribution. So nobody sign up for Patreon with iOS anymore, please. It's the PayPal users, Peter Alexievich, Paul. It's at Peter, Peter, Alexievich. Now, one of the great benefits of using the PayPal is that you learn my real name, right? Why all my shirts are monogrammed like this. But never stop thinking of me as Peter. I am increasingly Peter. Yeah, please don't dox me. Okay. Let's see. How are we on time? It is 12:59 a.m. here in Ukraine. And increasingly, Bobby, Peter is who I am. I mean, there's so many people here in Ukraine that only know me as Peter. And I'm probably right now, I'm more Peter than anything else. The name Alexievich is only used as a surname in one country on earth, and that is Belarus. And in fact, while there are not many Alexieviches, the family has 2 Nobel Prizes, one in literature, and I believe the other one is in economics. But fact check me on that. But there are 2 Alexieviches with Nobel Prizes. Now, I don't claim to be in that ballpark as my shirt-tail cousins. And Dave Hayes' kind words are appreciated. But I do try to communicate what I think is going on here and what I think we all ought to try to be aware of. Because we are at an inflection point in history, the outcome of which will affect literally generations and hundreds of millions of people. That's not an exaggeration. Not an imagination. Not an exaggeration. It's quite the mutual admiration society we got here, huh, Samsa? All right, kids. I'm going to call it a night. Make it a great day, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.